The Bhagavad Gita tells us, more difficult to control than a raging wind. Generally the mind is taking us here, there and everywhere. Telling us happiness is here, happiness is there. Our turbulent mind gives us no peace. And where there's no peace, it is said, there cannot be happiness. Generally we identify ourselves with this body, this physical body and the senses, which mean we also identify ourselves with the mind, the intelligence and the ego, considering them to be ourselves. Of course, these things that make up the body, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, the senses, they're important because they allow us to function and interact with the world around us. However, we find out in the Bhagavad Gita, if we're not careful, the mind, intelligence, the senses, the ego can bewilder us, put us in illusion, make us think that this material world and ourselves are separate from the Supreme Lord. And the goal of life, simply to try to enjoy this material body and this world independently of Krishna. So this bewilderment and illusion and covering of consciousness has been going on for many, many lifetimes. So taking up a genuine spiritual path means we're trying to purify our consciousness so we can transform our perceptions and attitudes and understand the purpose behind this wonderful creation and this purpose behind this human form of life. I mean, when for like a piece of paper, if I pick up a piece of paper off the ground, it has no value. But when the government assigns certain value to the paper in the form of paper money, it has value and it's useful. Similarly, without understanding the purpose behind this human form of life and the purpose behind this material creation, all our efforts in life may have very little value and actually very little meaning. So the Bhagavad Gita teaches us, but higher than dull matter are the senses. Higher than the senses is the mind. Higher than the mind, the intelligence. And what's higher than the intelligence is the real self, the soul. So we need to take control. How to take control? Ideally, if we discipline our intelligence to control the mind, which in turn controls the senses, this is said to be very good for our spiritual advancement. However, if we lack enlightenment and self-awareness and we're not in control, then what happens? The intelligence is easily pulled this way and that way by the restless mind and uncontrolled senses. So transformation begins when we use our intelligence, when we spiritualize our intelligence to control the mind. So the Bhagavad Gita describes there's 11 senses, and above these we have the mind, which is called the sense within. So the mind is responsible for three things: thinking, feeling, and intention. And like a computer's hard drive, the mind stores facts, it stores memories. It means that every sense experience we have, whether it comes from the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, leaves an impression on the mind. And the mind is changing constantly based on our experiences in life. So what does the mind want? Actually, the mind wants everything and anything. It moves from one thing to another. The nature of the mind is always restless. It simply wants this and that and the other thing. In Prabhupada, we see this comes up many purports in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada states especially there is no peace for the grossly materialistically minded persons whose mind tells them that they are the center of existence, that they are the independent, supreme enjoyers, controllers, and proprietors of this world. And the Bhagavad Gita tells us why there's no peace for these people. They're simply driven on by hundreds and thousands of material desires that can never be fulfilled. In this way, the mind torments the heart and completely bewilders them. So this is all due to mental concoction, that they cut off their relationship with Krishna and view themselves as independent. So in our bhakti school, we learn that ultimately we are not this mind. Therefore, we shouldn't listen to the mind, especially when the mind is presenting things which are harmful for our spiritual well-being. So we learn that to overcome and train the mind sometimes requires a battle of neglect. The mind may be telling us to do this. The mind may be telling us to do that. Therefore, utilizing our higher spiritual intelligence, we should become very expert at disobeying the mind's orders. Because the Bhagavad Gita also tells us, warns us actually, that we cannot trust the mind and senses. They want to act very loosely without restriction. Therefore, we have to simply learn to control them, not simply let them control us. Yes. It is said that the mind is sometimes, it's like a small child. Naughty, crafty, demanding attention. And like a small child, the mind is easily engaged in being entertained. As Prabhupada mentions this in this verse. So through these teachings of Bhakti Yoga, we learn how to give the mind higher engagement, so the mind becomes focused and peaceful. So in Krishna consciousness, we learn that this dynamic life of loving devotional service, mantra meditation, studying the sacred scriptures, keeping in good association, engaging in devotional activities, so many different activities that we perform, services, keeps the mind steady and under control. Then, naturally, when the mind is engaged in these devotional activities, in more meaningful and thoughtful thought patterns, what happens? It will inspire us to neglect inclinations that may jeopardize our spiritual progress. So this is just some of the amazing benefits we get from following this Bhakti Yoga process, which is a genuine spiritual path. So, in conclusion, ultimately we should understand to take shelter of the fickle mind and false ego is to take shelter of illusion. Better we take shelter of Krishna, become firmly fixed in his loving devotional service by utilizing our mind and senses in his service. And especially, which is highly recommended by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we should constantly bathe our mind in the transcendental sound vibration of Krishna's holy name. This alone will not only soothe the turbulent mind, but it will purify the mind, and our natural, joyful, spiritual nature and consciousness will become fully awakened. Actually, in the morning temple program, we're reminded that it's also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. We say this before the prayers. What ruins our japa more than anything and drags us into inattention is that we believe the mind's advertisements. We're easily convinced that we must follow every mental impulse every thought now, even when we're doing something as vital as chanting the holy name. So what does this mean? It means that we accept the mind as a self, as our authority. And we actively try and appease it. Thus we become befooled by accepting our mental fluctuations as vital and essential to our well-being, more than listening to Krishna's holy name. Better to neglect the mind. This is what Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita. Don't take it seriously. Realize that in reality, the mind's unending presentations actually insignificant and unimportant in relation to our eternal well-being. So gradually the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. It's not that one should simply obey the orders of the mind. When the mind understands that we are serious in our task of simply focusing on the holy name, the mind will relax and actually will cooperate. Actually, in recent japa retreats, we see in Govardhana and Burjan Prabhu, he does these japa retreats, I think in Melbourne as well. And they're taught the simple method by which we can capture the racing mind and focus it on the holy name. It's an easy method of slowing the mind down by giving us a simple task. That is, rather than trying to simply focus on trying to get through our 16 rounds, that task is too complicated for the mind. And it causes the mind to jump ahead, to get to the yet to be chanted rounds. Instead, give the mind a simple task by listening to only one mantra. One mantra, the mantra you are chanting right now. Just simply focus on chanting one round, this round we're chanting right now. At the same, just try it. It really works. At the same time, you need to form a statement of fixed determination or purpose. I mean, the mind will always tell us we have something more important to do than chant Hare Krishna. So we have to be determined enough to disregard the mind and simply focus on the mantra. All we have to do, listen to one Hare Krishna mantra at a time. Nothing more, nothing less. Chanting japa is not an invitation to the mind to just wander wherever it chooses. It's a time to enter into our personal relationship with Krishna by focusing on the holy name. It takes practice, and the more you practice, the easier it becomes. But if you just let the mind go wherever it wants, then it becomes more and more difficult to control the mind. I know Mahatma Prabhu and his gave a really nice seminar here on japa, chanting japa. He was saying even in America, some devotees, they chant japa while they're watching television. Or they're, surfing the net or you're talking to someone, and in between the conversation, you chant a round or half a round, and you gotta really focus on the mantra. So this Bhakti Yoga process, it makes us single-minded. When we place Krishna in the center of our life and awaken our pure love for him, then we can really understand who we are. And the mind becomes our dearest friend. Actually, there's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita which is similar to this verse in chapter 6, where Krishna tells us that one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon without exception all material desires, born of mental speculation, thus control the senses on all sides by the mind. So here again we're hearing in this Bhagavad Gita about the consciousness of someone whose mind is set on achieving one's spiritual goal in life. I mean, the question is how to get such determination in our spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita tells us how perseverance and determination are amongst the most significant factors in spiritual life. You know, once after many, many lifetimes, we've finally come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master like Srila Prabhupada. Much of our progress basically depends on how determined we are to attain the transcendental goal. I mean, the question some people may ask in the beginning is, do I really have the courage to seriously take to a bona fide spiritual or religious path, to Krishna consciousness, to improve my life? A lot of people ask this. Or am I simply afraid of the struggles and difficulties and sacrifices necessary to achieve the goal? Perhaps such a person should consider that actually in any walk of life, if one wants to become successful, it requires some effort, some sacrifice. If you want to become a successful business person or a successful athlete, I mean, these Olympic athletes, they train. Sometimes I go swimming and I see these. Actually, I swim at the university pool, and I'm swimming next to the Olympic swimmers. And actually, these guys, they're like swimming 10, 20 kilometers a day. And they do this. You see them, they start when they're 5 years old. To become an Olympic swimmer or an athlete, or even just a successful musician or a tradesman, even to get a university degree, or just to raise and maintain a family and a source of income for your whole life, requires a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifice. Similarly, it's the same. Spiritual perfection is the same. It requires a determined effort and perseverance. Not that you can just be lazy and not wholeheartedly apply yourself and still achieve the goal. You may if you don't take Krishna consciousness up seriously and this practices seriously, it means basically you're accepting the fact you may have to come back again in your next life and take another birth in this material world. And it's not that, Prabhupada warned us about these gurus in India that tell us, you give me some rupee, I touch you on the head, you get full enlightenment. Don't need to do anything. You become self-realized just when I touch you on the head. You just give me the rupee. I mean, the good news is when Krishna sees our determination in wanting to come to him and sincerely serve him and follow his instructions, the more he will help us. We cannot succeed without Krishna's blessings. Still, we have to show our sincerity by making a determined effort. And this, because Krishna's helping us, it can lead to results beyond what we think possible. Yes. But as the saying goes, Krishna helps those who help themselves. We just have to make that decision to become serious. And we might not be serious super serious right now. Burjan Prabhu was giving a lecture once. He was telling us that even though we might not be seriously now, but there'll come a time in your spiritual life when you just make that choice that I'm going to become serious, I mean, life itself is about making decisions and choices. I mean, every day, every moment, we're making choices and decisions about so many things. And life is also about learning and growing, finding real happiness, finding real meaning in life. Now, Bhagavad Gita tells us in our life, the most important choices we want to make are choices that address our highest well-being, our spiritual well-being. Yeah, it's all a part of loving yourself, respecting yourself, taking yourself more seriously, taking good care of yourself, planning out your best future, catering to your real self-interest, so your life will be more meaningful and your destiny will be more beautiful. Also, we learn in the Vedas that the key to success in bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, is one should execute the process of bhakti with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance and determination in the association of devotees. By regularly associating with spiritually minded friends who share our spiritual aspirations, this is what gives us great strength and great inspiration. It's said it charges our spiritual batteries, protects us, empowers us, and helps us to grow amidst all these obstacles of life. So this willingness to put aside material sense gratification, control the senses and the mind to pursue a higher purpose in life, this is what's called determination. Determination. And of course in bhakti yoga we learn that the duty of a disciple of a spiritual master is to be fixed in one's determination to execute the orders and instructions of one's spiritual master at any cost, despite all problems and obstacles in life. And also in that verse, talking about faith, we're doing also that determination must be accompanied by faith. Without having strong faith, both in the goal and the process for achieving the goal, we can't possess determination. Faith is so incredible. When we have faith in the higher self and our connection with the energy, power, and love of Krishna, we can do incredible things with complete confidence, enthusiasm, and perseverance. Actually, Radhanath Swami tells one story about one lady, Wilma Rudolph. You heard of Wilma Rudolph? She was a lady from Tennessee in America. When she was a young girl, she was in a very bad car accident. And the doctors told her that you will never walk again. Actually, your rest of your life will be confined to a wheelchair. And the doctors told her this in front of her and her mother. And she turned to her mother and she said, "Mother, I don't want to be in a wheelchair. I want to run on these legs. I want to be the fastest runner in the whole world." And the doctors were they were kind of pretty amused by her desire, enthusiasm. And Mother said, "Yes, dear," she said. "You just have faith in the Supreme Lord. By His mercy, anything is possible." So, she used to exercise and she had these big steel clamps on her legs to help her walk. And finally she got the clamps off and she went to school and, she used to go on the races, the school sports. But she used to come so far back from everyone. Everyone used to laugh at her. And they used to make fun of her, tell her, "Why are you going in these races? You can't run." And but she never lost faith. She always had faith in her inner self and the Supreme Lord. And she used to pray. And she used to train and exercise very hard every day. And finally, actually in 1963, she took out She took out 3 gold medals at the Olympic Games for running. And she actually broke world records. So it just shows you. She just had faith in her inner self and the Supreme Lord. And she tried. So this is the power of faith. You know, when we have faith in our higher inner self and connection with the energy and power and love of Krishna, we can do incredible things with complete confidence, enthusiasm, perseverance. Then we can move quickly towards spiritual perfection by enthusiastically really putting our heart into trying to please Guru and Krishna through our devotional service. Also in Bhakti Yoga we learn that genuine spiritual advancement actually it comes gradually. Therefore we have to be patient. You know, one of the biggest challenges we face today is that we've become a society of instant everything. Right now is not soon enough. You know, people have lost appreciation for struggle. Now, patience and perseverance in this age is very limited. Even you talk to people, you know, dance teachers, people that teach music. It's hard to find students that want to stick with it these days. People they've lost appreciation of patience and struggle and determined. They want everything right now. And besides this instant result mentality, people have become, you could say, blinded by the glitter of material opulence. I mean, it's a material jungle out there. People who have lots of material possessions, they can never have enough. They just want more and more and more. And that those that don't have them, they're always hankering and lamenting for what they don't have. Ultimately, we need to acquire things for our maintenance and survival. But we shouldn't think this is the be-all and end-all of life. I just hearing a lecture this morning by Prabhupada, he was saying that we don't work hard like asses for our whole life, simply to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. There's something more in life. So in Bhakti Yoga, we learn that spiritual life doesn't mean that we simply turn our back on the world. No, we learn how to spiritualize our whole existence by connecting our everyday activities to the loving service of the Lord. And we learn how to stay in focus and live in our sacred space by arranging our life in such a way that we have a good balance between our spiritual practices and our everyday material affairs. It means every day we have to strategize how I can balance my time, how I can fulfill my material duties in life, still have spare time, hearing spiritual topics, chanting Hare Krishna, studying Srila Prabhupada's books. And this way we can live in our sacred space, both within ourselves, within our environment, and reclaim our spiritual freedom. Yes. Hare Krishna. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah. You have to be, I'll try and pick it up on behalf. I'm a bit deaf.
Hare Krishna.
No, actually, I'm getting new hearing aids next week.
Thank you very much for being...
Too many loud kirtans.
There's a term in psychology, I think it's called like high-functioning depression, and it's where essentially perseverance, and it's like the mind saying, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore, and then but then using that as fuel to grow, I'll wake up at 1 a.m. I'll wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'll chant 100 million rounds and like Haridas Thakur, and the mind says, don't do this. You're killing yourself, you know. But then determination. So how do we balance determination and perseverance with not listening to the mind when it's saying don't engage in devotional service?
The mind says you want to be enthusiastic and perseverance, but the mind is putting a damper on it. Sometimes, right. I mean, Maya is, in a sense, she's a very clever thief. We have this most precious asset, our Krishna consciousness, but she's going to try and steal that away from us. And one way in which she does that is she gets into our mind and tells us, that, why are you being so fanatical? You're going against your natural self, You should just, and I mean, it gets to the point where you can become spiritually lazy. The mind tells you, you only chanted 8 rounds a day. But you're not any different. You're still a devotee. You're okay. Maya tells you like that, She gets into your mind, or she may tell you, that, this is. So I mean, we have to be very. And also, it's sometimes it's not easy, in this age, due to our past conditioning, due to the influences of this modern age, Therefore, association of devotees is very important. Reading Prabhupada's books. Every day we should read. If you don't read the books, and it's a fact, Prabhupada criticized the devotees, they don't read my books. Then what happens is you forget why we're here, why we're doing it. You might start thinking, well, why am I doing here? I'm working hard every day. I'm not getting paid. No holidays. It's like, you forget what the whole purpose of practicing Krishna consciousness is. If you don't read the books and understand, why we're here, why we're doing this, then you can become, you become complacent, But also it's, we have to, sometimes we see even senior devotees or book distributors or even Maharajas, sometimes they take a step back from the field, and they just focus on reading, increase their chanting, increase their reading, work on the internal spiritual strengthening, go to the holy Dham, spend some time in Vrindavan, or just reading and chanting and, gain some spiritual strength, especially when you're going out doing Sankirtan, like you guys are going out every day. Just by that association of those materialistic people out there can affect your consciousness, can actually wear you down a bit, So sometimes you need to really, see, just like when you notice a cold coming on, or you take some echinacea, you take some vitamin C. So similarly, when you got to be in tune with your consciousness, and when you feel that your consciousness isn't, or you're feeling some lack of inspiration or some lack of Krishna consciousness, then you got to really take shelter of the process of Krishna consciousness. Maybe chant better, more focused rounds. Chanting every book distributor who's out there full time, they know that the real thing that's going to really make their day successful is chanting their rounds, good quality rounds, really focused on the rounds, not just chanting robotically or mechanically, but really listening to that holy name and really, calling out to Krishna, while we're chanting, my dear Lord, please accept me, Krishna. You see that Mahatma's chapter seminars, Krishna, I need help. You really got to you got to really take shelter of the holy name. And as he said, in that Japari workshop, we're gonna spend 2 hours chanting our rounds. So we might as well, since we're going to spend 2 hours chanting our rounds, we might as well do it right and get the benefit of it. you know. It's so important. But it's, yeah. Is that okay? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.